Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, back in Studio West, joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Hello, Senator Cotton. I hope you noticed that the best quarterback in the draft went to the Browns yesterday.
Good afternoon to you. I hope you're doing well, and congratulations, I guess, on the Browns draft.
I'm not even sure whether that best quarterback is Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, but it's one or the other. Senator, I finished sending in a column for Fox News this morning. I'm going to give you the headline, which is President Trump won't ink a bad deal with Iran. The subheadline is, a bad deal would destroy his legacy while either without genuine nuclear disarmament by the mullahs or the U.S. bombing of Tehran's nuclear facilities guarantees it. Now, my question to you is, am I right? He won't sign a bad deal?
I believe that's right, Hugh. The president has been crystal clear now for this for 4 months, really for 10 years. I mean, he can't say it any more plainly. Iran cannot have a nuclear program, and they can have a path to a nuclear weapon. And he doesn't speak the way traditional Republicans speak, who say, or else all options might be on the table. He says it very bluntly: there will be bombing. So he says, I think he said it last week or 2 weeks ago, that Iran probably wants a deal so they can live happily without death. I just don't know how he can be more clear on this. And a good deal, obviously, is a deal that cuts off all of Iran's paths to a nuclear bomb. That includes all of their highly enriched uranium and their advanced centrifuges. They don't need those centrifuges or highly enriched uranium for civilian nuclear power. There are a couple dozen countries around the world that have civilian nuclear power that don't enrich their own uranium. So there's plenty of ways for the president to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon through a negotiated deal that is a good deal. The only question is whether the Ayatollahs will accept any of those deals. And if they won't, Hugh, that tells you all you really need to know about their ambitions.
Now, there's a paragraph in this column that concerns you. It says, keep your eye on Senator Tom Cotton. He's a strong supporter of Trump and a hawk's hawk on Iran, as well as chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Cotton would assess any deal with very critical eyes and would not hesitate to assess it as a disaster or close to one, or praise it if it deserves praise. Can we count on that?
Yeah, Hugh, again, I don't think I'll have to assess a bad deal, because I don't expect the president would make a bad deal, because he has been so clear from the very beginning about it, is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And again, that's not just for the last 4 months, it's for the last 10 years. The first conversation I ever had with Donald Trump was the summer of 2015, shortly after he entered the race, shortly after President Obama signed his awful deal. And he thanked me for my advocacy against it in the Senate, and said that it was a terrible deal and that he'd rip it up once he got into the White House. And that's exactly what he did.
So what's going on here is that it's like he wakes up every morning, and if it's an odd numbered day, he says there will be bombing, and if it's an even numbered day, he says, well, the negotiations are going pretty well. That's just the art of the deal, but it weirds out people who hated the JCPOA. Are you upset when he goes back and forth, which is just the art of the deal stuff?
Yeah, I think he's been pretty clear that those are the two options. Whether he emphasizes one or the other, he always comes back to the fact that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, which means they can't have a nuclear program with centrifuges and highly enriched uranium. I understand that some people around him and the president's orbit, or the self-proclaimed MAGA influencers, may stress that, Iran should be trusted with centrifuges or enriched uranium, or basically saying what Barack Obama did 10 years ago, which is either this bad deal or war, and therefore you should take his bad deal. But the president himself, the president personally, has never said anything like that. He has always been very clear. It is either a good deal that eliminates Iran's path to a nuclear weapon, or there will be bombing. Again, that's not what George Bush would say. That's not what a lot of other Republicans would say. They talk cryptically and diplomatically about all options being on the table. But Donald Trump is very blunt and very direct with Iran and with the world.
I hope you're right.
So
I want to switch over to the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, plural, issued a reconciliation overview today that included 10 different things. I just walked through them with Admiral Montgomery. I want to go to the $13 billion for nuclear deterrence. Is that enough, given that the Columbia class alone costs $20 billion if we get those boomers in the water?
Hugh, I'd probably like to see a little bit more, but we're working within the constraints of the budget we passed a couple of weeks ago, and we obviously have a lot of other priorities as well. But $13 billion, I can tell you, Hugh, is a lot more than what Joe Biden was going to provide, and it's going to help move forward nuclear modernization, which unfortunately is a little bit behind time and behind schedule, in part, Hugh, because of Joe Biden's inflation. When you're building new missile silos, new submarines, new bombers, of course, general inflation is going to affect the price of concrete and steel and other materials that go into all those weapons. So we've got to accept the fact that these things are going to cost a little bit more than might have been projected 5 or 10 years ago. But of course, our nuclear deterrent is the bedrock for our safety and security and really our way of life. It's not a question of can we afford it. The question is, can we not afford it?
All right, now, Senator, last question. It's 100 days, and everyone's doing their 100 days back. To me, the most important thing Donald Trump has done is close the border, not merely for the immediate consequences of allowing us to focus on those who cross the border illegally, but also proving that it could be done and that Team Biden just didn't want to do it. I don't know that we'll ever trust a Democrat again on the border. Do you think this night and day light switch on, border closed, versus Joe Biden arriving, light switch off, border open? Do you think anyone's ever going to forget that?
I hope they don't, Hugh. I mean, there were months in Joe Biden's tenure when we had 300 to 350,000 illegal migrants crossing our border. Now we're down to fewer than 8,000. And I hope it continues to trend downward. We'll provide the president in this budget that we're going to pass soon with more resources to secure patrol agents, more immigration agents for enforcement across the country. But it is a stark contrast. And I agree, it's accomplished a lot in these first 100 days. But the single most obvious accomplishment is securing our border and putting an end to mass migration, mass illegal migration across that border, in contrast to Joe Biden. This is not an accident. This was a deliberate policy choice that Joe Biden and the Democrats made, and one that Republicans have reversed.
Senator Cotton, always a pleasure. Thank you. I agree with you on the 100 days. You have a great week. Talk to you next week, Senator Tom Cotton. Follow him on X at SenTomCotton.